Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and mute yourself, and there will be times to take yourself off mute, but I'm hearing people's TVs in the background and so forth. And I'm Sandy Price, and tonight we are going to begin our advocacy series, and I'm very excited to welcome those of you who are here. And I also want to say thank you just briefly and introduce Barbara, who I think just put herself on, turned off her video, but that's okay. You can see her lovely picture there. Barbara Schwartz, who is our program person, and she does all of the amazing logistics and everything for these programs. And this wouldn't have happened without her. And also Michelle Wood, who just let herself into the room, and she's very, very helpful for helping us get the word out about these events. So before we dive in, I just want to give a plug for the 13th, when we'll have the second piece of this series, and we will be having a presentation on boards and commissions and how to find out what boards and commissions have openings and how to apply for them if you are interested, followed by Beth Meyer, who runs an organization called Leading for Change, and she trains people who would like to run for office. So not only would we like you to come, but if you know someone who has been thinking about running for office, please bring them or urge them to come as well. And it's just fine if they're not a WomanUP member. If that's something they need to learn, please have them come. All right, so I already have a question. The answer is that I've created an advocacy unit, and I will put the recording in the advocacy unit, and we'll announce it when that happens. It'll probably be a day or two till we get that done. All right, so the order of business tonight is that Sandy Bahr, who is the Grand Canyon director, a chapter director for the Sierra Club, and somebody I've known for so many years, I almost can't remember when I didn't know her, is going to give us a legislative overview. And following that, Jude Simons, is it right that time? Good, okay. Who is joining us from a sister organization called Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, and also agrees with WomanUP about how important it is for us to not think we're done at the end of the voting season, is going to teach us how to use the tools that the legislature has created for us to be able to follow legislation and to have an advocacy role during the legislative session. I think I need to, did I already make you a co-host? I'm looking, Sandy. I did that.
It looks like I can share. Let me.
Okay, go ahead. All right, so Sandy. All right, while you're figuring that out, I just want to tell everybody that Sandy's basically responsible for lobbying for on behalf of Arizona's natural resources and environment and ecosystem, and all of us who live in it, including the things that are not human, at all the levels of government. And she's amazing. And so at the end of her thing, if you have a question about that, we can't take too much time for that, but if there's a burning question, I'm sure she'll answer it. All right, Sandy, it's all you. I'm going to put myself on mute.
Okay, and I'm happy to, you can contact me afterwards and we can chat. So I'm going to talk about the legislature and how a bill becomes a law, and a little bit on some do's and don'ts of lobbying, depending on how much time I have. But like Sandy Price, I always like to start out at the beginning and make sure everyone has a good baseline. So I'm going to give a quick overview of Arizona government, then the deeper dive on the legislature, its leadership powers, like I said, how a bill becomes a law, and then some of these other items if there's time. If not, no problem. We can always follow up separately. So, and hopefully I will leave time for questions. So in Arizona, we have 4 branches of government, and we have the standard 3, the executive, legislative, and judicial, but we also have the Corporation Commission, which is a separate branch of government. The 5 officials here are the executive branch, the governor, secretary of state, treasurer, superintendent of public instruction, and attorney general. And the governor has a fair amount of power, actually approves and vetoes bills, just like we would think, but also has line item veto on the budget, which gives that individual kind of proportionately more power than the president. Calls the legislature into session, delivers the State of the State speech, which will be happening on Monday, and oversees all of the state agencies, appoints individuals to boards and commissions. So next week, you'll be hearing more about the importance of that. And I am glad that that is part of the focus, because that's really an important role. I wanted to mention a little bit more about the Corporation Commission, just because it's an important body, and I'm hoping that people will pay attention to it. And it is a constitutionally established commission, and there are 5 elected commissioners, 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. They, like all of our state level offices, are term limited, and we're only one of 7 states that has a constitutional commission. They do utility regulation, private water companies, securities, railroad, and pipeline safety. And I have a whole thing on the ABCs of the ACC if you ever want to know more about that. So let's get to the legislature. And this map shows the 30 legislative districts. All of these districts will change for the 2022 election. So we had the census. We will have redistricting. They're going to start in earnest next month, and we'll have new districts. But for now, this is the district map. It's a bicameral legislature, House and Senate, 60 representatives, and we have razor thin margins in both the House and Senate, 31-29 in the House, 16-14 in the Senate, that partisan split. So the people who preside over the legislature, the Speaker of the House and the Senate President, Rusty Bowers in the House and Karen Fan in the Senate, these folks have a lot of power at the legislature. And Representative Bowers is going into his second 2-year term as Speaker, and so is Senator Fan going into her second 2-year term as Senate President. Probably pretty solid in her position, but there's been a lot of talk in the Republican caucus about potentially replacing Speaker Bowers, ironically, or oddly for me, because maybe he isn't, you know, well, it's about the elections issues. And so I think some people in the caucus don't think he's conservative enough. So these two, like I said, have a lot of power. They control both chambers. You know, the House Speaker controls the House and the Senate President, the Senate chambers. And so they decide what the rules are there. So right now, the House is still trying to figure out how they're going to operate under COVID. No one knows. They haven't put anything out. I keep asking people, how are you going to operate for the session? The session starts on Monday. They still haven't quite decided. The Senate has put out rules for how they're going to operate, but some of the senators have said they're not going to follow those. So we'll see how that all moves forward. But these two people got to decide on that. They sign all bills, acts, anything that comes out of the legislature. They decide what committees, standing committees there will be, how many, who serves on them, who the chairs are, who the members are of those committees. They can remove committee chairs, you know, in the middle of the session, all kinds of things. So they have a lot of power, and they decide the order of business and also on hiring and firing the staff at the legislature. The minority leadership, Representative Bolding and Senator Rios, they're both new to these positions this year. And as you might guess, because they're in the minority, they have less power than the Speaker and the Senate President. But they still have some, and especially in a close split like we have. Basically, what we saw happen in the House in 2020 is if one Republican was gone, they wouldn't have stuck together, then they could kill a bill, right? And so that is one of the powers that minorities have, is sticking together and voting as a bloc, and then they can have a pretty big influence on at least some legislation, particularly legislation that might require a 2/3 vote or certainly a 3/4 vote. So before I get into how a bill becomes a law, I just also wanted to mention citizen initiatives and referenda, because in Arizona, we get to be legislators. Everyone are all voters. We can create law directly through initiatives and referenda. And that's really an important part of our process. Many important laws, programs, funding for education, as we know, comes from the voters and not from the Arizona legislature in many cases. And we can also stop laws, which is also handy and has been utilized for things like, you know, stopping vouchers and things like that. All right, so let's get into a little bit about how a bill becomes a law. So every bill has to have at least one House or Senate sponsor. It doesn't have to have more than one, but it has to have at least one. And bills can be introduced in either house of the legislature. It can introduce in both. You can have the same bill in both houses. Unlike Congress, budget bills don't have to start in the House of Representatives. They can start in the Senate, and you know, there's really no requirements for that. Bills are prepared by legislative counsel. They're a group of lawyers that make sure they're written properly and comply with what's in our statutes, because sometimes legislators get model legislation from groups like the American Legislative Exchange Council, and they think they can just plop it into our statutes, but it actually takes a little bit of rewriting to do that. So most bills do come from lobbyists, despite what legislators say. They still most bills come from lobbyists. So once a bill is introduced, it's assigned a number by the clerk and it gets a first read. And then it is assigned to a standing committee by either the House Speaker or the Senate President, depending on where it's at. And that's a second read. And then it goes back to the clerk for printing and posting, distribution. Mostly bills are just posted. They don't really print very many anymore. And that's nice because we all can see them fairly quickly online. When I first started doing this work, they, you know, you sometimes would have a bill assigned to a committee and you wouldn't have read it yet because it hadn't been printed and made available. So there are some things that are much better. So after a bill is assigned to a committee, then that's where the committee chairs come in, and the committee chairs also have a lot of power. They can decide whether or not to hear bills. A lot of bills die right here in this part of the process where the committee chair just decides, I'm not going to hear a bill. We've had a water bill for the last couple of years that we couldn't get heard in the House Natural Resources, Energy and Water Committee. So it gets introduced and then it gets assigned and then it goes nowhere. And that happens to a lot of bills. Also, when they do hear a bill, they can take public testimony, public comments on the bills, but they don't have to. So a lot of times people will get upset about that, rightfully so, but they're not required to take public testimony on bills. If the committee passes the bill, then it goes to the Rules Committee, and all bills have to go through rules, but all bills don't have to go through rules and another committee. Some bills just get assigned to the Rules Committee. So environmental bills, for example, usually get assigned to Natural Resources, Energy and Water, and Rules. So they would go through Natural Resources, Energy and Water, then to the Rules Committee. Bills that are going to be used for other purposes will sometimes just get assigned to Rules. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Rules is supposed to just decide if a bill is constitutional and in the proper format, but it tends to be a very political committee where, you know, bills will again go to die, or they'll hold on to them, you know, holding out until someone does something that, you know, the chair wants them to do on another bill, and then they let their bill out of committee. So it becomes very political. If a committee defeats a bill, the bill is dead, but there are a bunch of ways that bills can be resurrected. So I always say the bill is dead for now. These committees, these standing committees, you know, government, elections, commerce, education. This is really a great opportunity for people to provide public input. And one of the things that's really cool about the Arizona Legislature, and believe me, I don't say that very often about the Arizona Legislature, it's really cool, is that you can just sign up, and you're going to hear more about the request to speak system, but you can just sign up. And if it wasn't for COVID, of course, just go and you could speak on a bill, and you could just decide that morning, you know what, I'm going to go down, I'm going to sign up, and I'm going to speak on this bill. That's not the case with Congress. If in Congress, if you want to speak on a bill, you have to be invited by the committee chair, and you have to provide all kinds of information ahead of time. And so a lot of people never have an opportunity to directly address a bill in Congress. So I think it's pretty cool that we can do this. And this is also an important time to talk to the individual legislators, because the committees a lot of times are where legislation really gets shaped. So really significant part of the process. And if you're working like with students or people that you're mentoring and trying to encourage to speak up on issues, I think having people participate in the committee hearings is a really good way to do that, to gain some confidence and get some experience with that. Because sometimes they only give you a minute, so you can prepare a minute worth of comments and do that fairly quickly. So, and yell at me if I'm going long, by the way. Strike everything amendment. What's that? No. So I wanted to mention strike everything amendments. This is sort of what I referred to earlier when I said some bills get assigned to only rules, and that's because they're going to use it for other purposes. So you'll see a bunch of bills that they'll say agriculture, technical correction, blah, blah, blah. And they'll get assigned only to rules. And you're like, well, what is that? What are they fixing in this bill? And they'll change one word. They're not really fixing anything. it is a bill that is called a vehicle bill that is going to be used for a strike everything amendment. And this is where they take the bill and they strike the whole thing and replace it with a brand new bill. So if you see S/E and then a new title, that's where a strike everything amendment is going to be offered. If you see a bill and it's labeled now and then has a different title after it, that's a bill that has been the subject of a strike everything amendment. These amendments are usually only offered in committees. That's the rule they've applied for the last number of years, but they used to offer them on the floor sometimes too. And mostly I feel like they're used to bring back or promote some pretty controversial issues. Once in a while, though, it's just cleaner to do a strike everything versus a bunch of amendments. So once in a while, there is a legitimate reason to use them, but mostly not. And then, okay, so after rules, the bill is referred to the committee of the whole. You'll hear people refer to it as COW. But before it goes to committee of the whole, there's an informal part of the process where the Democrats all get together and separately the Republicans all get together and they caucus on a bill and they go over the bills and they talk about amendments and the staff explains who was for, who's against, why they were against. So they can be very informative part of the process if you want to observe and find out what's going on. And then after caucus, the Speaker and Senate President decide when the bill will go to committee of the whole. Most bills will go very soon after they've gone through caucus, but not all. And the committee of the whole is a session of the entire House or the Senate. This is where all the debate happens, amendments are offered. There are usually no recorded votes unless for some reason a bill fails or they will amend the report and have a recorded vote, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that. So bills that go through committee of the whole only need a majority of those present. Of course, they have to have a quorum, but they only need a majority of those present on the floor to pass. And then after COW, it's third reading. So this is a lot of times the last step in that particular House. This is the recorded vote. There's no debate. They just can explain their votes. And this in this part of the process, you have to have at least a majority of the entire body to pass a bill. But some bills require even more than that. So a new tax or fee requires a 2/3 vote, overrides, veto overrides. If you want something to pass with an emergency clause, which means it becomes law immediately upon signature of the governor, that requires a 2/3 vote. And then changing any ballot measure requires a 3/4 vote. And it also must further the purpose of the ballot measure. After it passes on third read, it goes over to the other House for a similar process. And if it stays the same, then it basically well, no, if it's different, it has to go back to the other House and they can concur, and then it would go for a final vote in the other House. If they refuse any amendments, then it goes to conference committee and then has to go back to a final vote in each House. The main rule is that bills have to pass in the same form in both Houses. So if there are changes at some point, it's going to have to go back to that other House and they'll either concur and do a final vote or they'll agree on any fixes to the bill and it'll go back to both Houses. And then if it passes both houses in the same form, it's up to the governor. The governor signs, vetoes, or allows a bill to become law without their signature. I've only been to like 2 bill signing ceremonies, and this was one of them. It's so funny, like you can't even see me in this photo, but anyway, so that's why I'm using that photo. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, there's no pocket veto in Arizona. If the governor doesn't act, then it will become law. And the governor has 5 days to act during session, 10 days at the end of the session. That excludes Sundays. So I don't know how I'm doing for time, but I just wanted to cover, like, just if you're thinking about either trying to work on a bill, passing it, or defeating a bill, just some tips that I like to provide for people. Start early, know your issue, try to get a good sponsor, someone who's credible. Think about who else can support the bill. Talk to relevant agencies. Most bills require an agency to implement, so it's important to have a conversation with them and at least know if they're going to oppose the bill or not. You have to keep an eye on deadlines. There are all kinds of deadlines in the legislature, and some bills just die because they miss deadlines. And then you just babysit the bill along the way and count the votes. I think you have to do that whether you're trying to get something passed or defeated. You have to just keep an eye all along the way. And remember, no bill is dead until the legislature adjourns, because again, there are all those ways to bring it back, including that strike everything amendment that I talked about earlier. A few do's and don'ts for volunteer lobbying or lobbying overall. And I have a whole handout on this, a PDF handout that I can send to Sandy, but a lot of these are basic common sense, being honest, cordial, being on time, thanking the public official. It's always a good way to start a meeting. Sometimes the only thing you can find is thanking them for the meeting. So, but it's a good way to start out, and of course, enjoy your visit. And likewise, the don'ts, and I think maybe some of these are also common sense, but then maybe not so much with some of the anger and hostility we've seen in recent years. I don't think it is very helpful to go in and advocate and threaten or be hostile. If you're going to work to elect someone else, just do it. You don't have to threaten it. But you do want to be assertive and get your message across. And that is definitely something that, if sometimes you'll go in to meet with someone and they will try to steer the whole meeting onto something else. So you do have to be assertive with usually a one-pager on the issue you're lobbying is a good idea. Too much information is probably not going to get read. And if a legislator wants more information, you can always provide that. And then this last one, not everyone agrees with, but I think it's a good policy not to put anything on social media that you wouldn't say directly to an elected official. Doesn't mean you can't be critical of what they're doing, of their policies. I just think that if you think about that as you're getting ready to send that tweet, which I do, I use social media. Just think about, when you go in to meet with them, would you be comfortable saying that to them? It's just a good, for me, a good test on whether or not I really want to send something. So I'm just going to wrap it up and just say, come to the Arizona Capitol virtually. You can join us for our virtual environmental day. It's February 3rd. I can send a link for details on that. And we have a bunch of workshops leading up to it. Also send out weekly legislative updates focused on environmental and democracy issues. I won't talk about request to speak. Let's see. And then, yeah, just join us, speak up, even
Andy,
if your voice shakes, and I am happy to take questions. Yeah.
would you mind putting the link for getting your newsletter into the chat?
Yeah, I'll do that
I was
after
gonna
I
type it in. I was gonna type it in, but it changed too quickly. So
Yeah, after I stop sharing, I'll stay on and I'll put a couple of those links in there, and I can send you a PDF of the slides too if
okay,
if
great.
they're useful.
Yeah, no, they will be. Thank you. Okay, anybody have any questions for Sandy? Sandy, thank you so much. Any questions? If you do, just put them in the chat, and we're going to go ahead and get started with Jude so that we can more or less stay on time. We started a little late just to wait for people to enter the room. So I will thank you so much, Sandy, and thanks for hanging out for a while.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm glad you're doing this, and I'm glad I was able to make it. So thanks.
Oh, thank you so much. I will say right before Jude starts that once she gets going, I've noticed that we have a little bit of wavering of our Zoom bandwidth here. So when our speaker is working, if you don't mind having your video off just for that period of time, it will ensure that we don't miss anything that the speaker is saying. So thanks. Jude, it's all yours.
All righty, I'll see if I've mastered the technique of sharing my screen. Let's see.
If not, just let me know and I will walk you through it, but I bet you have.
Uh-oh. No. Present. Are you seeing my screen?
We are.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Judy Simons. I pretty much go by Jude, and I am presenting this. This process has been put together by Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. Earlier, I did put the website in the chat, so it should be there.
Jude, Jude, can I interrupt you for one quick second? I apologize. Sure. I hate interrupting, but there are a number of people in the room, and if when Jude shared her screen, what you see is half the screen, her screen, and the other half, all of the little pictures of us, you are probably going to want to increase the size of Jude's screen because you're going to see that there's a lot of intricate stuff on it. You can do that by, if you run your cursor over the space between the pictures of us and her screen, you'll see that there's a little line, and you can like click, left click and draw her screen over and make it bigger. And then you'll be able to have more of what she's sharing with us and be able to see it better. Okay, I'm done. Sorry for interrupting, but I didn't want anything you're showing us to go to waste.
That's okay. No worries. We are trying to, like it says, get people engaged beyond voting. And with Sandy's introduction to how the legislative process works, the purpose of this is to give you the tools to use this technique, this request to speak, which allows you to get a little more involved. Oops, I keep skipping one. There it is. Okay, this is my favorite quote. I can't skip this slide. This is part of our Constitution, which was ratified in 1912. All political power is inherent in the people. We, the people, have the power. And our request to speak is us using our power. So request to speak, it's a way to save the world. It's a way to get involved from wherever you happen to be, just so long as you have computer access. This is what the screen looks like. We'll get into it, that screen later. Whoops. And the first thing I want to point out on this slide is the third bullet here. You do not have to speak at all. A lot of times people hear request to speak and they kind of get freaked out. Oh, you mean I'm going to have to go down to the legislature and speak in public? I don't want to do that. That's the scariest thing in the world to do. Request to speak is an online tool. You give your feedback online from any computer, anywhere, anytime. Your support or opposition to a bill is seen by the legislators in the committee. If you remember that part of the process, when a bill is, before a bill is voted on by the whole session, the whole legislature, the whole House or Senate, it goes through a committee, and this is where you make your support or opposition known. You share your opinions directly. And like I said, anytime, any place, but you do have to pay attention to schedules, and we'll get into that in a minute too. So right now the legislature is not meeting. They start on Monday, but lobbyists haven't stopped using request to speak. That initially is why request to speak was formed. If you've ever gone to a school board meeting or city council meeting and you did want to address the panel, you would have to fill out a little card, a request to speak. Well, lobbyists have to do that to speak in committees, and it's kind of evolved into this electronic online method of doing so. And they are down there at the legislature and in contact with our legislators right now. You know, their pet interests, what they want laws to be or not to be. And so we need to do what we can do. So here's that website again, Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. And I think Sandy had this slide in her presentation also. I hope you all know who your legislators are, what your legislative district is. If not, you can go to this website. I think it's still up. This is going to be changing because redistricting is something that's going to be happening with the new census data. But you put in your address and you can find out what your LD is. So if you don't already know that, it's pretty easy to find. This is the Arizona azleg.gov website, the legislature website. It's actually pretty handy. You can find out who your representative, your senators are, and you can find their contact information. This really does give a really good wealth of information. This tab right here, let me go to the next slide. If you click on this tab that says members, it'll open and you can see by district, alphabetically, by party, however you want to organize it. You can see who the members are of the Senate and the House. Note this one right here, the request to speak tab. That's what we're kind of focusing on. But this is like I say, it is an impressive website for the legislature. So we call this the Kill Bill Guide, and this is kind of a little bit of, Sandy went over this in more detail. Once a bill is sponsored by a legislator, if you know about it ahead of time, you can contact the sponsor if it's a bad one to ask them to withdraw it. You can call the leadership of the Senate or the House, depending on where it originated. But if it turns out that the bill is going to be considered, it's going to be scheduled for a committee. If the leader of the Senate or House decides they're not going to they're not going to assign it to a committee, the bill is dead, as Sandy says, for now. It can come back again. But if it's scheduled for a committee, that's when you can start to use RTS. And this is really important to know. RTS is only useful when the bill is being heard in committee. Once the committee has voted, you can't use RTS again until it goes to another committee. And bills do go through at least 2 committees before they're voted on the floor. If it passes all the committees, then it'll go to the floor for voting. That's time to get in touch with your legislators. We call this the Kill Bill Guide, and you know, we've been kind of proud of the bills that we've prevented from getting passed, but the same procedure would apply if you want a bill to be passed. So it's voted on by the House or Senate, all these different procedures. Sometimes it takes a while to get eventually to the governor finally. If the bill makes it to the governor and you have feelings about it one way or another, we encourage contacting the governor directly. So here's the website again, the homepage. There are two ways to get to the request to speak. One is this legislative information is a drop down, or this big tab right here in the middle is request to speak. And once you get into the system, you'll sign into your account with your email and your password. And I realize this presentation doesn't explain how to get this account. It is necessary to be at the Capitol at a kiosk in either the House or the Senate and provide your name and email. And that's really all it is your name and email to set up the account. So this organization, Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, and I am one of 2 or 3 people who will go down to the Capitol once or twice a week. We'll take your information, we'll go down to the Capitol and we'll set up the account for you. And then you'll get an email with a confirmation that your account has been set up. You'll have a generic password the first time. And this is what the login screen looks like. Now, I can't see you, but if you're thinking, I kind of think I did that last year, the year before. If you think you already have a request to speak account, but you're not sure and you don't remember your password, just click on this down here, forgot your password. Then you'll get a screen to send your email so that you can reset your password. And if you get a reset email from the legislature within, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, that means you do already have an account. You just need to reset your password. But if this is new to you, then you'll be signing on for the first time. And this is what the screen will look like when it comes up, and you'll see that it has your name. This is Sharon Kirsch, is another one of the founding members of the Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. So the first time you sign in, you'll come up here to your name and go to this account management tab. You can reset the password if you want to change the generic one to something specifically for yourself. We encourage people to go to this update personal information tab and register and indicate that you are a registered voter. I don't know that we can prove it, but this will show up when your request to speak is logged. And if the legislator sees that the comment is coming from a registered voter, they may pay more attention. It's not necessary that you be a registered voter. Kids, I've done some presentations with high school kids. They can also use this system, even though they're not old enough to vote yet. But you need to put in your birth date and then put in one of these 3 things, either your voter ID number or your driver's license number or the last 4 of your social security. You don't need all 3 of them, just one. And then that will show up that you are a registered voter using this system. So the request to speak actually has 2 parts, the request to speak and the bill status inquiry. And I gotta say, this website can get a little addictive. You start going through all the things that you can find out about laws and the process and this bill status inquiry. You can spend a lot of time on it, but we're going to talk just about the request to speak side for now. So you're ready to speak. You want to make your opinion known. So you're on the request to speak side. If you notice this little green slide bar, you're going to slide that down and click on new request. Every time you're making a request to speak, it's going to be a new request. And then you will need to put in the bill number. You don't need to worry about the committee. It kind of defaults to either Senate or House, and I kind of leave it like that. You just need to put in the bill number, and I'll talk in a minute about how you find that out, and then click search, and then you get this screen. So if your position on the bill is you're in favor of it, you'll click for. If you're against it, against, thumbs down. Neutral is almost never used. Sometimes if you think, well, you know, the bill might be okay, but it needs to be amended in a certain way, you might pick neutral for now. Mostly it's going to be for or against. This part here must be filled out one way or another. If you click yes, you wish to speak, that means you intend to be present, however it is, either in person or virtually, however they do it this session, and you are going to speak to the committee about the bill. You can always click no. You just want them to know your position, but you're not going to speak to them. And then there's a place here for you to leave a comment explaining your rationale, your concerns, whatever. It can be as simple as please vote no on this bill, or you have 250 characters to explain your position. This is not a place to rant. This is public knowledge. This is publicly available, and everybody who is on this system will see it. All the legislators see it. The media sees it. Other people on request to speak can see it. So please be thoughtful about what you write here. And I, as a retired teacher, always encourage, make sure you proofread before you click submit. And we also encourage following up with emails or phone calls. It's possible that your particular legislator is on the committee, or perhaps not on the committee, but you want your legislator to know how you feel about it. So it's a good idea to send an email. And again, you can go back to that one page that shows who the representatives are, and that has all their contact information. So how do you know what bills are coming up? How do you know what that bill number is and what it's all about? Well, this is where, if you subscribe to the Iyer report, Melinda Iyer is one of the founding members of the Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. And she is the one who spends a lot of time doing the research. She puts out a weekly newsletter, weekly update. She will review what's going on, what's coming up in the next week, the effect of the bills. She, most of the times I agree with her positions, but she will let you know what's coming up in the coming week. Because again, it is very timely. You do have to jump on it when a bill is going to be heard in committee. You've got to make your position known that week. And so she also will kind of break it down depending on how much time you want to devote to this. If it's, you don't have much time, what's the highest priority? If you have a little bit more time, there's some suggestions for bills or other ways to spend that time. We are having these RTS office hours. What I'm going over tonight is just really an introduction, and I'm sure some of you have used this before, but it may be new to some of you. It can be a little confusing at first until you get the hang of it. So we are conducting these office hours once a week, and this is on the website. You can sign up for the weekly office hours, and we go over the bills that are coming up and how to use the system. Save Our Schools Arizona, some of the same people. This all got started 2016, 17. We were very concerned about what was happening with education, and moms and teachers and concerned citizens wanted to actually get more involved in having an impact on the legislation. So this is just a little plug for Save Our Schools Arizona. If you have questions, another thing that you can get to on the legislative website is the frequently asked questions. There is a place for request to speak, and there are specific questions that you can go to and see if that's helpful. So ways to get involved. First of all, sign up for that Iyer report. Again, here's the website, and I have put it in the chat earlier, and I think there's going to be something sent out in an email after this Zoom meeting. Use that request to speak system. Like I said, it can get a little addictive once you get started on this. After you've read that weekly and then you start poking around and seeing what else the legislator is up to, you can spend a lot of time on it. Find somebody to work with on this. Find a political action buddy. We came to the realization that having our friends and our you know, people with similar mindsets working together made it a lot more fun, and we were a lot more effective because we could talk with each other, discuss how to, you know, how to say things, and it's just helpful if you've got somebody to do that with. Get involved locally, indivisible. You're already in this WomanUP group, other groups, whatever your particular interest is, and get involved locally, because local, you know, we're all kind of focused on what's happening in Washington right now, but actually what happens at a local level has more of an immediate impact on our lives. So that's our website. And once again, this quote, "We have the power. The power is in the people. It's up to us to use it." So I will stop there.
Thank you. That's a lot.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to reshare your screen if that's okay with you, because we have a request to take a quick look at page 28 again. And so if you don't mind going back into your slideshow. And also, I'm sure I'll get it in the email that I can share, but Laura left the link to Melinda's weekly report, and I took it and I got to an error page. So I'm guessing that it's typed wrong.
I'm sorry, I wasn't following all of that. You said slide 28?
Slide 28.
That's slide 28.
Is that what you wanted, Stacy? Stace, can you come off your mute?
Yes, it was. Thank you so much. I was just trying to get all those resources copied down, so I got it now. Thank you.
Yeah, this is the main one, that the Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. There is on that website, there is a link to the Google Doc. I actually am going down to the Capitol tomorrow. So if you're someone that does not already have an account and would like one set up for you, go to that tonight and fill out that Google Doc. All you need is your email, your first and last name, and then it does ask, you know, how involved do you want to get? I would suggest that you at least sign up for the weekly update. The other things are up to you.
So, could you? I know you said that you can get lost in that site, and I haven't poked around the site yet. But I remember getting lost in Alice, which was the mechanism for doing these things before, although you could not request to speak through it. Can you kind of make a list for people, just verbally, of what kinds of information is on that site?
Okay, let me see if I can share I've got the website up. Let's see if I can get to that. Oh, no, it's not coming up. Sorry. There we go. Okay, can you see this?
Nope.
Nope, you're not seeing this.
I don't know if anybody else is. I'm just seeing a black screen that says Jude has started screen sharing. Double click to enter full screen mode.
Same.
Okay. Okay, so this is beyond this, then I don't know what to do. If you go to the website azleg.gov, which I do have in the chat here, somebody put in the chat.
I did.
What you're talking about, ALICE, is the Arizona Legislative Information System, I think is what it stands for, ALIS. What I use that for is the calendar. It shows the events that are scheduled, the committee hearings that are scheduled, and other events. The request to speak tab. Again, just, you know, navigate, just click on something and see where it gets you. If you come to one of the RTS office hours, it'd be easier to address specific questions.
So I'm just curious. So Alice still exists?
Yes, Alice is one of the it's under the calendar. There's a tab. Well, hold on, let's see. Hold on one second. Let's see if I can find this again. Okay. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so here's calendar and news. Here's Alice today. Is that what you've been talking about?
Yeah, I was just saying the last time I tried to get into the legislative system, I used Alice, and I didn't even know about the RTS system. I don't know how long it's been there. It's been since 2004 when I was a lobbyist, so that's new to me. I assumed that the RTS system replaced Alice, but it looks like these two are living side by side. So I guess what I'm trying to get at without confusing people is there's more to understanding what's going on than understanding how to advocate. So I guess what I'm asking you is, where do people go to look up different versions of bills? And after things have been voted on, they have sometimes been adjusted in committee with new language. How do people know where to go to find the actual things that they want to advocate about?
So that's in this request to speak. I'm not sure if this is going to work. It is. Okay. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yes, we see your
Okay.
screen. It's perfect.
So there are two applications, request to speak and bill status inquiry. And you can see I've already made a comment on something. They haven't even started yet, but I know this is a bill that's not a good one. But
what I'm looking at may be different than what you're talking about. I'm looking at the page and it may just be what you landed on when you went to share your screen. It says Arizona State Legislature. It's the front page of the 2021 55th Legislature first regular session.
Okay, so that's all you're seeing is the website.
Yeah, but that's
Okay.
because when you shared your screen.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so can you see this request to speak tab in the middle?
No, maybe. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so come back here. Okay, so in request to speak, once you log into that, you have two sections. You have either request to speak or bill status inquiry. And bill status inquiry is where you find out all the information about the different bills, who sponsored it. You can see other people's, once the session gets going, you'll be able to see other people. And this is what the media sees also. They can see, and this happened in the last session, just hundreds of people signed up in opposition to a bill, and about 5 people, primarily the Chamber of Commerce, were in favor of it. So when the committee voted in favor of the bill, the media came back to them and said, why did you vote in favor of that bill when so many people, so many constituents were against it? So that shows up in that, but I'm not sure, I don't know how to share this screen that shows all the different aspects. So
I'm going to tell you how, because I think it'd be valuable for people to see it.
Okay.
And just hang on a second. Don't do anything.
Okay.
Unshare your screen. And then after you've unshared your screen, go back into share your screen. But before you click on anything, it will show you all of the open windows that are available. And you just had the wrong open window picked. So you just need to look for the right open window and click on it.
So the right open window that I wanted was this one.
All right, so that's what we were looking at. Can you actually click into request to speak and then take that other, okay, so we're in the same place. So take that other road, not the request to speak road, but the research road, whatever you called that.
The bill status. Are you looking at my
just
screen
show
now
us something
that has my name?
Okay, yeah, just show us something.
Okay, so the bill status inquiry. It's kind of hard to, well, let's see if I can go back to this one. Oh, did this come up?
Yep. Bill history for HB 2523, youth employment.
Yep. Okay. So, I mentioned I had done a presentation for a high school class. So the bill was to allow employers to pay people under the age of 18 lower than the minimum wage. So can you see the people who are for it?
Yes. Yeah.
And can you see the people who are against it?
Yeah.
Can you still see the people who are against it?
Wow.
Everybody's name who signed in against it shows up, and if I find mine, I'll point mine out to you here.
And I also noticed that they have to say whether they're representing themselves or they're representing an organization.
Yes.
Yeah, so the only one that's not self that I see on that in front of me is Protecting Arizona's Family Coalition, for example. So that's good to know. That tells you who the stakeholders are on both sides.
Yep.
I know some of those people.
Yeah. So you can see when you're in this bill status inquiry, you can find out who sponsored it. You can find out the easiest thing to read, I find, is the fact sheet or the summary. So the most current. So this is where you get started spending a lot of time. You can read all these documents. They're all available.
Right. So this is a fact sheet, and they get put together on every bill, usually
Yes.
by staff, so that you can see what information is being given to the legislature. And that's the same thing that the legislators use to learn about these bills. Most of them know nothing at all about the subject matters of a lot of the bills that they have to eventually vote on. And this is the beginning of the ability of them to start learning about it.
Because the legislature I mean, I've heard as many as 1,000 bills in a legislative session. And, you know, how are you going to keep track of all the details of 1,000 bills in that period of time? So yes, they do depend on somebody coming up with these summaries for them. I wanted to point out this little space here. This is a place where you can do like a rough draft of your comments before you go to the request to speak, and nobody will see this but you. So if you do feel like ranting, here's a place you can rant.
Yeah. The other thing I want to just point out to people, since we're talking about the 1,000 bills that you just pointed out, is that what happens are that legislators are appointed to committees that they work on. Sometimes they stay on committees for years, and whatever the committee is, they become experts. Sometimes they express to the leadership what committee they want to be on, and other times they are just put there. Sometimes they're punished by the choices for something bad that they did. But my point is that people who are on committees, for example, if you're on the education committee or you're on the health committee or on the environment committee, end up becoming experts. And there are 90 legislators. They cannot possibly all be experts in everything. And so if you are, for example, a Republican legislator and you don't know anything about the environmental bills that come up and you need to know, you are going to look to your Republican colleagues who are sitting on the environment committee, and you're going to ask them how to vote. And you may or may not ask questions, and you may or may not have your own opinion, but for the most part, that's what makes it key to know the people who are and to connect with the people who are on the committees that will decide whether or not a bill ends up going to the entire body. So that actually is helpful, because it helps you know that if you are wanting to lobby on an education bill, you need to get with the people on the education committee, and they are going to influence the other voters in their own party. Of course, that doesn't stop you from talking to all the legislators that you have access to, but that's really what happens. People on the committees become experts, and the others know they can't be an expert in everything, so they look to their colleagues for help.
There's a question in the chat. It's
from
Deb.
Deb. Can you enter into RTS before a bill is scheduled for committee? Does the RTS comment survive to later committees?
Good question. You do have to have an active bill number in order to be in the request to speak. You do have to, the bill has to have been assigned to a committee, because that's the only time that request to speak applies. yes, once you have made your position known, it stays there. And as the bill goes to another committee, you pretty much have to do it, make your comment again for another committee. But there are ways to navigate through the different committees that a bill is heard, and you can go back and see what positions there were. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of that question?
Does the RTS comment survive to later committees? I think you just answered that.
Yes.
So Barb and I actually attended one of these trainings that you're doing right now last week. And Barb wanted to know if Civic Engagement Beyond Voting still needs people to help them as volunteers go down to the legislature to register people.
We have 2 people. I'm one, and there's another one, and then we have a backup person, and it kind of depends on how many people end up signing up. It doesn't take long to do. I was down there last week and I did about 30 signups in about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes.
Can you go over
volunteer by all means, put your name in.
Can you go over really quickly what you can do if, okay, so as I understand it, there's things you can do if you don't sign up at the legislature, and there's things that you can't do unless you have. Can you go over what you can do if we don't have you sign us up, and what we need you for to sign us up for?
Well, you need to be, in order to have the request to speak account, in order to have this account.
Should is it my turn?
I'm sorry?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. The account needs to be set up. Let me log out of here. Okay, so in order to get to this sign-in screen, the account needs to be signed up at the legislature. That does need to be done at the Capitol. And the reason for that, what I've been told, is if this was something that you could just do from anywhere, from any computer, we could have people trying to comment on Arizona bills from anywhere in the country, not to mention anywhere in the world. So they're trying to have some control on actually who gets one of these accounts. And that's why you have to go to the Capitol to sign up. I believe there are also kiosks in Tucson. So if you live in Pima County, you can go to Tucson. You don't have to come up to Phoenix. But once your account is established at the Capitol, then you can use it from anywhere.
Okay.
You can always contact your legislature, excuse me. Let me get back to, there's probably an easier way to do this. You can always find your legislator and their email. You can always email or make a phone call. But to use the request to speak, and again, that only applies when a bill is being heard in a committee. If it's not in a committee yet, you can't request to speak on it. And once it's out of committee, once the committee is done, you're out of time for it.
Randy asked whether there's an alert system inside RTS. For example, will a notification be generated to an email address when a bill moves to a new committee? That's a great question.
It is. And unfortunately, you have to do that yourself. You can, let me get back in here. Hold on a second. Oh my gosh, look at all these meetings they've already got. Okay, I'm going to sign back in. Hopefully I did that right. Okay, in the bill status inquiry, can y'all see this personal progress management?
Yep.
Okay, so this is something that you can set up bills that you're interested in. There will be alerts that show every time you sign in, but you actually have to set up the bills the list that you're interested in following, the bills that you're interested in following, and then you have to look back and see if there is an alert. That's why the office hours that we're doing once a week, you're going to be checking it at least once a week. See, here it is, my alerts. Anything else?
Actually, you know, I just had this idea. I am putting the link to request to speak into the chat. And if anybody wants to go there and try it, if Jude, if you don't mind hanging out for a few minutes, I think it might be useful for people to just see if they can pull it up and see if they have any questions real quickly. Are you game for that?
Sure, but keep in mind, if you don't already have an account, you won't be able to do anything. Now, if again, if you think you may have done this before, but you don't remember, you can go to that.
Where do you sign in? Literally, this is here. If you wouldn't mind pulling out of yours for a second, I want to show you what I signed into. So this is where I found myself when I clicked on the link I just gave everybody.
That looks like.
It's a bunch of questions like problems or, you know.
That looks like the FAQ.
Yeah, exactly. It is what it looks like, but it just is request. It's the request to speak site. Where is the?
Okay, do you see where it says legislative information? Click on that and then request to speak. And now you do have to sign in the upper right hand, but this is where you have to have the account in order to sign in.
Okay.
On the left hand side. Well, okay.
It'll be interesting to see. I think I may or may not have created it. I may or may not have done this while I was in the training the other day.
Okay, where the tab that says create an account, that is where you have to be at the Capitol to create the account.
Is this the account that we have to do in person, right where I'm doing this?
Yes.
Okay, so I can't actually do it. So I have to let you guys know so I can't do this here even. Okay, I'm confused. So if you have signed me up at the legislature, then I could sign in here.
Correct.
When you go to sign me up at the legislature, do you create a password for me and then send it to me? Is that how that works?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
We have a generic password, and as soon as the account is created, within a day or two, you will get an email that confirms that your account was set up, and you will get the generic password, and then you can change it. Okay.
And if I was getting a generic, if I was getting an email from you, what would be the, somebody said it looks pretty limiting. We need to coordinate a bus. Was that you, Stacy? Stacy, I think what happens is there's a way to send your information to Jude or to Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, and they actually will go down there and do it for us. So,
and that's what I'm saying. I am, hold on one second. I am going down there tomorrow. So if you sign up, if you go to the cebv.us website and click on request to speak, and then click on whatever it is, sign me up or request an account, there's a Google Doc that you fill out with your first name, your last name, your email. That spreadsheet is what I use when I'm at the Capitol, and I will set up your account tomorrow.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. I was really unclear, so I will take care of that right away. Thank you, Jude.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was also what I was trying to figure out. I misunderstood, I guess, when I was in the earlier training. I thought that there was some stuff you could do without it and some stuff you needed it for. So, okay.
And I'm seeing a question from Tammy about how long is your registration active? If you think you signed up, can I share my screen again?
Sure, I'm out of it. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, if you think you signed up, get to this screen, which you get through just the azleg.gov and request to speak, click down here where it says forgot your password. And then they will ask you to send your email. They'll send you a reset if you need to reset your password.
All right, and I am also adding to the chat because one of the things that you need to know is what district you're in. I'm going to add to the chat a link where you can find your district if you don't happen to know it.
This
I don't
right
know it
here,
because I
who is my legislator? If you do not know your legislators, click here to find the legislative district you live in. You put your address in. I don't know if this is all sharing or not. Is this sharing?
Yeah, that's exactly what I just put into
Okay. Yeah, and then you put in your address and then it'll tell you your.
There's also a question from Carolyn in the chat that's asking if all bills are written by lobbyists, ? Not our representatives, ? And then there's a comment that says that explains a lot, but you don't have it. They're not only written by lobbyists.
Are you familiar with the organization ALEC?
ALEC is a group that is that proposes legislation and model legislation that is then adopted. But the actual answer to that question is that there is a group that is non-political. ALEC is very political and very right-wing, but there's a group that is non-political that is actually part of the Arizona Legislature that is called the Arizona Legislative Council. And sometimes they just look at bills that have been proposed and fix them so that, or at least point out the places where they need to be fixed to the people who have taken over the drafting of them so that they don't interfere with unintentionally with other legislation. But oftentimes an idea will be given to legislative council and the legislative council will write up the idea. And the legislative council is at least lawyers. And so when something comes through legislative council, there's a good chance that it doesn't have a constitutional issue, but it doesn't mean that it's neutral. It just means that they have done their best to write up what has been handed to them.
Mm-hmm.
And ALEC, go ahead and talk about ALEC, Jude. It's a good thing to know about.
Well, I mean, I guess it's kind of I don't know. You hear about the influence of the Koch brothers on everything, and ALEC is a group of large corporations, special interests. They want what they want and they will write up a law, and they literally, it's like, I don't know, do you know what Mad Libs are? Where, you fill in the blank, the story is told, but you fill in the blank. And so it's the same legislation, no matter what state, you just fill in your state and your name is the sponsoring legislator, but it's these corporate organizations that are wanting the legislature to do something or not do something, and they have way too much power. It's the legislators are not responding to their constituents, they're responding to the corporations that are members of ALEC. So
I think it's important to know too that as an individual, if you have an idea for a bill, you can do the research and begin to put that together and then talk to your representatives and approach them about and find a sponsor for your bill.
Which doesn't mean that they will sponsor it, but you may be able to find someone. And if you actually want to do that, I was a lobbyist for a long time. Come and talk to me and I will tell you how to get some traction. Okay, anybody have any other questions, or if you put something in there that I missed? Tammy, did you get your question answered?
Well, I just need to go check it. I just was curious if there was a blanket answer to that question. I was just curious, but I'll just go log on. I mean, I know for sure that I'm in there. I just don't know if it over time
no, they do not
purge.
Again, it's just a matter of you remembering your password. If you don't remember it, try to get it reset. If you don't get an email back, like within, like I said, 10, 20 minutes, then you probably don't have an account, or maybe it was so long ago. I've never heard
Yeah,
of.
it wasn't
being
that long
purged.
ago. It was like year before last. It should be good.
Yep, should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. I'll check it tonight.
All right, any more questions for Jude? I want to encourage everybody. I've put the link to Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, both their website and their Facebook wall, into the chat. And I encourage everybody to go and like the Facebook page and to check out their website. They are a group that, like us, very engaged politically. And I think what's really important is that our work doesn't stop at the end of the voting season. We have to be able to follow the rules, make sure to fight bad legislation, make sure to support good legislation, and hold the people we've elected, hold their feet to the fire, and let them know that we're actually watching them. One of the saddest things that I learned while I was lobbying is that somebody's got a TV going on in the background. Can you mute? Thank you. One of the saddest things that I learned over the years of my lobbying is that people who came into the legislature with extremely good intentions ultimately figured out that the only way that they could exercise any power was by compromising themselves. And it's really a shame. I don't know all the legislators that are there now because I haven't lobbied since 2004. But I know that at the time, the uncompromised lobbyists I could fit in my hand, one hand. And so it's really important to hold their feet to the fire, to remind them that we elected them and that we have expectations for them so that they don't succumb to the machinations of the system, which is ugly. All right. That's pretty much it from my side. Jude, you have anything
I have
else?
one more quick question for myself. If I signed up when we did the training last week, will I get an email confirmation once someone completes it?
Yes, tomorrow. Well, I'm going down tomorrow. I'm not sure when the email will go out, but
Okay.
before Monday.
So if we did training last week and we signed up last Wednesday, then it hasn't been entered yet.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
On Barbara, on the possibility that it was entered and I didn't see the email, I just signed up again. But anyway. Okay, Jude, thank you so much for spending your evening with WomanUP. You should
My
come
pleasure,
and hang out
and
with
thank you for
us.
getting women involved like this. Yep.
Okay, the chat gets saved automatically, but Tammy, is there some way to individuals can save it if they want to see it? Is that something you know how to do that I don't?
Yes, there's a three little dots at the very bottom right of your screen. I'm not seeing it on my phone, but on my computer, I always save
Yeah,
it.
it says more, but when I click on it, that's not
There's
an
a
option.
it's the bottom. When you're in your chat,
Oh,
it's right at the bottom of the
okay.
chat to the right,
see
and
it.
it says save.
Yep, save chat.
Yeah, that's definitely, if everybody could save it, otherwise it's gone. They could save their own into their own files.
I actually will get a file of the chat. I won't get anything that was private between people, but I'll post the content.
You will, yeah. Yeah, I often save it because there's always so many good resources put in there, and then they're lost
Good
unless
point.
I save it to my phone, to my computer.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Jude, very much for spending the evening with us. Everybody, I want to remind you again that on the 13th, we are having the second part of our advocacy series where we will talk to you about how to know what openings are available on different commissions and boards at the local, county, and state levels, and how to come by a job with the new administration. If that's something you are interested in, that's the 13th at the same time. And we're very excited about that. And thank you again, Barb, for all the work that you do to get these things set up. Everybody give Barb a hand because she really makes it happen.
Thank you. And as a reminder, the Planning Commission meeting is tomorrow night. I just posted that in the chat as well.
Thank you. All right, everybody, have a great evening.
Thanks. See y'all on Facebook.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night. Well, Barb, I'm not as polished as you are, dear.
You can stop recording.
Oh, yeah, thanks.